Which, if you weren't familiar, then that once in a blue moon is because it doesn't happen all that often that we get 2 fulls in a month. Oh, are we going to have an eclipse in April then, Raven? See, now this also goes into what Chromatic Coffee was saying, just thinking of plot twists. All kinds of interesting things can happen. Or if you wanted to work with your storyteller to make a Bane where full moons actually, you don't burn in a full moon, but it makes you itchy. Kind of makes you uncomfortable. Because there's too much sunlight beaming back down off of a moon after it's entered, I don't know, like 25% plus or whatever. Or not 25% plus, you know, the, like, leading into and out of. Maybe a night, it may not be the one night per month, but... Oh, excellent then, Raven. Yeah, let's work that out. Cyborg, hey, if you gotta sleep, you gotta sleep. I understand it, and I appreciate it. And also, you're welcome for being woken up to this. Ah! So in our last segment, we went over the concept of a relationship map, and we actually just quick-genned up some examples. I would argue it is even easier if you as a storyteller ask your individual players to make their characters, and they hand them to you, and you just take that information, it's already done for you, you list it out, and then you and you and your players sit back and connect the dots. It's easy and compelling, and it's a great way to find story fodder. Because just by some random rolls in chat and you all expressing various opinions about people in your own lives, we've created some very dynamic and cool things. Hi, Diadams. Yeah, it could. So, Chromatic, it could even be that because of the intensity of the moon on those nights, you might not even have to be touched by the rays of the moon. You just, like, there is no ability to pass a rouse check for waking up at night. It's fatiguing. Your body needs the blood in order to function. So you could do all sorts of cool stuff like that. Of course. So we have our blueprint, and the book here, in fairness to the book, does talk about cities as a location, even before getting into the stories to tell. The city can be a character in and of itself, with a certain spirit, a feel, a culture, a little bit like we were talking about in the last segment. The same vampires might make different decisions in Cincinnati as compared to Phoenix. It's just different in many regards. And while both vampires need blood and shelter, how you get that, despite the 2 large cities in the U.S., that's just even in the U.S. The same game would be fundamentally altered by the setting. And we'll go over the city, but it's fine if you consider things out of order as well. Alright, and Chromatic, hope to see you back. So in a sense, I'm skipping over city because you can build the city first. It can even be a fictional city. You know, do you want your own Gotham City or Metropolis that's on a generic Eastern Seaboard? Or you say, no, this is going to be Atlanta, Georgia, except the underground part of it actually never, it was never really built over. So it could be a real city with a comma but, it could be a completely made up one, or it could be as excruciatingly real to a big city you know, or a medium city, or a small town. Now, survival in a small town might be a challenge, but I'm sure there's a vampire who can do it. You may not have, a tremendously large court, because, you need so many people before you can have a stable source of support for a parasite on humans, and sometimes animals. So we'll talk about cities. We'll do that in probably tomorrow's workshop. But for here and now, let's go over the concept of Chronicles in VTM. And if you have your books out, everyone, come on. You did bring your book to class, I hope. All right, well. Everybody in a game of vampires shares the same goal: to play a good, interesting game together. The players and the storyteller collaborate in creating a shared experience. The storyteller provides the world, the supporting characters, and external events. The players each portray a character who lives in this world and interacts with the storyteller's creations and the other player characters. While the player has to create a character, the storyteller has a much more daunting task: to create an entire chronicle and then run it. So the first thing you need is a concept. What is your chronicle about? Who are the characters and what do they who are your characters and what do they do? What is the experience you wish to build? For example, your concept could be a group of anarchs seeking to depose a corrupt baron who secretly serves the Camarilla. The Chronicle is about creating political change. The characters can be created very differently, but the important thing is that they should want to do this. The experience of the Chronicle is about the danger, hope, excitement, and the ambition of deposing a ruler. Concepts can vary wildly in style and substance. There's no right or wrong way to play vampire. If the Chronicle works for you and the players, all is good. Another example of a concept would be a chronicle about the slow erosion of humanity as the characters go deeper into the inhuman world of the Camarilla. They start young and hopeful, traumatized by the embrace, but seemingly fitting in at the Elysium. As the game proceeds, they find that success and dehumanization often go hand in hand. Their powers grow and their connections to their old lives wither away. A game like this can be contemplative and deliberately paced, with long conversational scenes about the characters' various circumstances. As a very different kind of a vampire game, the characters could also be a team of archons sent to the Middle East to try to navigate the Gehenna War in search of an elder who disappeared with essential information about the Camarilla's political and financial assets. Without the elders, nobody knows how the machine is supposed to work, dealing a blow to the sect's power and influence. During character creation, you create a custom relationship map that features the player characters, their sires, touchstones, allies, enemies, and their various interpersonal relationships. This co-created cast of characters is a great resource to make sure you all care about the Chronicle from the get-go. The players helped create these people, and their kindred have strong relationships to them, so they are already invested in them. When planning a Chronicle before character creation begins, it's a smart move to use some placeholder names and descriptions for several of your key characters, and then later switch them out for characters from the relationship map. This method is also easily applicable to customize published stories. And this was a route that I had taken similarly for the Redeemer set in Cleveland, Ohio. The concept I wanted to run was there. There was a series of events that would happen no matter what. And I went back and I was able to try to customize the details of the setting and the interactions and the way that the player characters were interacted with by my SPCs based on who and what they were, the challenges they faced. I will say, Raven, you got off very easy in Damocles' test, because what I had asked Derek to do was different than what he has done. So in that case, I would have been the big meanie. So what he did was what he did. My suggested example to him was to have Ivy jump over a broken poured concrete wall. Now the concrete might have been crumbling, but the rebar was still sticking out of the cement. Now Ivy is not a particularly athletic character. And so she might get a lesson in blood buffs, okay? And let's say that you did. You were clever. You were too clever for Damocles, Raven playing Ivy. You blood buff and you successfully jumped over the spiked pit in this dungeon of an abandoned factory. And as you dust yourself off and you go back to Damocles and you say, "So, how was that?" Damocles would have taken a piece of rebar he had and punctured your lung through your chest cavity, like in one end out the other. And he said, and while you're looking down as your lungs hiss out, he says, "That was really impressive. You did a good job jumping over the pit. But that wasn't the lesson I'm trying to teach you. I'm trying to teach you that you have the ability to do things that mortals can't, such as stand there with a piece of rebar piercing you. Now, would you kindly pull it out, and I'd like to see you heal your lungs in front of me." And the very stunned and breathless Ivy, looking down, would have to grab that rusty piece of rebar and drag it out, and very much without words, or at least you'd get a little bit of a hiss when you tried to speak. You would need to spend your blood in order to heal, because the lesson wasn't necessarily about buffing your muscles to jump over the spiked pit of rebar and concrete. It was learning how to take a hit in what you do when that happens. Because Ivy's probably not had to do much, if any, of that before. So Derek let you all off very easy in the factory. I had other plans. So, here are some examples, right? You can go through and you can read about this, and you're like, I don't know, what is the Gehenna War? Don't worry about that right now. If you're new to this, you don't even need to have a Gehenna War going on in the Middle East or elsewhere. Maybe this doesn't exist. This is a very flexible system, and you don't need to know the lore. The lore, trademark. I'm sorry. So the example for weaving the relationship map into a circumstance. You're planning a noir-style murder mystery chronicle set in the Camarilla city of St. Petersburg, an ancient domain full of betrayal and hidden agendas. The inciting incident is the destruction of an influential Camarilla kindred by her close friend, another Primogen. The crime is covered up as a Second Inquisition attack, leading the player characters on a dangerous chase for clues until they discover the identity of the killer just before they strike again. As you run character creation, you inform the players that St. Petersburg is the setting, and for your Chronicle to work, they need to be a Camarilla coterie based in the city. They then progress to create their roles in the relationship map. After character creation is done, you switch out the first victim from unknown kindred commander, or from your story with one of the player character's sires, the killer with another mentor, and during the Chronicle, the killer will threaten the lives of a third player character's touchstone. So the events are the same, you just make it close, you make it hurt, because you make it personal. So there's tips like this that is located in this part of the book, and I would urge you to read it. Now, what I'm going to do is throw out some of these Chronicle suggestions. These are the frameworks that you can weave your details onto. The default Chronicle. This is your first vampire game, or maybe you just want to get on with it. Here's a basic concept for what a Chronicle can be. The vampires are young vampires in your home city. Maybe they are already undead when the game starts, or they could be embraced in the first session. The city has a Camarilla elite and an Anarch underclass, to which the characters automatically belong. The first sessions are all about acclimatizing to vampiric existence. The characters hunt, deal with the remnants of the mortal lives they left behind, and try to survive simple challenges presented by Camarilla authorities and the Second Inquisition. As the game progresses, the focus increasingly turns to finding a place for themselves in the world of the dead. Do the characters want to ascend to the Camarilla, or foment rebellion with the Anarchs? Pretty solid notion. What's another one? Inheritors of the Illuminati. The coterie has been chosen or even created to guard the legacy of an elder of the Camarilla, as she is called into the Middle East by the Beckoning. On her travels, she will meet the ancients and learn untold secrets, at least if she makes it through the crucible of the Sabbat's Gehenna Crusade. While she is gone, the coterie has been empowered to claim her vote in the Primogen Council, and they may choose to run her empire as they see fit. They have vast resources at their disposal, but all of Kindred society is envious of them, waiting for the smallest mistake to tear them to shreds. What the Elder never told them is that they are inheriting her enemies as well as her influence. They will have to use all of their combined smarts and powers to survive their inheritance. The coterie's mortal cover is likely to be a major company, an estate, a hospital, a university, or a hotel. This is the Chronicle for those who want to begin near the top and probably have to fight tooth and nail to not come crashing down as their empire is besieged. Raven was saying, for those wondering, my first Chronicle was one of Derek's where I played a caitiff. My second or third session, I failed the roll to jump off a moving train and promptly got run over by it. Took forever to fully heal. So Vampire is a role-playing game in which joyless monsters wrestle with morality in the shadows of suitably gothic architecture, right? Well, it can be, but it can be fun too. You're allowed to have fun in Vampire. Wink. You're allowed to laugh, make a joke, point out some irony. To have some sort of a gratuitous or extremely satisfying set piece scene. The set piece, the set piece scene, in a sense, from last night's Redeemer finale was Clyde kind of coming back onto the scene, and well, things played out as they did. Um, so you're encouraged to have fun, do things with your character you would never dream about saying or doing in real life. Try to live or unlive in the shoes of someone else. And ultimately have fun with your friends or family at your game table. Judgment Night. You play the Sheriff's Brood, the Scourge's elite anti-anarch troops, Ventru enforcers, or any other self-styled or official group of Camarilla soldiers. Your characters could be a task force created to oppose the Second Inquisition in the field, or through infiltration of mortal intelligence agencies, or even an elder's personal squad of bodyguards fighting in the Gehenna War. Whatever the history, the Coteries' role is that of an undead intelligence or paramilitary operation. And the stories you tell will test the characters against both monstrous creatures and innocents who are just trying to get by. Will they be protectors or oppressors, heroes or villains? The key to this kind of chronicle lies in the moral ambiguity and hard choices. The characters' mortal cover could be very similar to what they really are, a paramilitary group, security company, or even a police department for hiding in plain sight. But kindred law is not mortal law, and a criminal gang, terrorist group, or even a night open church could just as well be the front of this coterie. Of course, secrets within secrets. As the fledglings in Redeemer found out, they have been caught up in something that is a lot greater than they. I had intended to reveal a lot more, but I did not have the opportunity to do so. A very good point to the fact, that you can have some irreconcilable differences between characters and such. Number one, make sure it stays between characters and not, don't ruin friendships or relationships or whatever. Family bonds over a game of vampire, please. Pure horror means that evil starts to lose its significance. When everybody's a monster, nobody is a monster. Lots of great examples in here. So reading the sidebars does help reinforce the rules as written. A hunting party as something to consider. You can use a lot of symbolism with the way that you build or name or run your character. Whether that is, like Coffee Cat's character Mouse being a symbol for even another symbol of Spider-Man. Someone who styles as a hero, though is still kind of young and awkward in the sense of things. But play into it and put in obvious things, or in our intro, there's a lot of conspiracy theory, occult stuff. Put it in there. Enjoy it. Use that to explain it, or to try and come up with why this is how it is in our real world. How about a chronicle with a Fang Gang? Whether your coterie rolls with MS-13 affiliates, outlaws, Tottenham fans, or a Black Bloc Antifa group, they hide in plain sight. They are members or even leaders of a group outside society and the law. By attaching themselves to predators, their behavior is much harder to spot for the Inquisition, but if their gang includes mortals, they have their work cut out for them. The player characters can choose to make their mortal allies blood addicts, pay them off, or meticulously keep the Masquerade in front of them. No matter what they do, there will be problems, drama, and tragedy. Hopefully the benefits outweigh the dangers. A Fangang is a great coterie for taking a deep look into into life on the outside, using real-world source material. A wealth of information and even video interviews with gang members is available online. A gang coterie doesn't have to be violent. Perhaps the player characters are posing as a group of card skimmers, burglars, or quiet dealers, working in gated communities or with the burner scene. A chronicle about nomads. You move city to city. Not quite a I mean, kind of a monster of the week, I suppose. But maybe you just go city to city. There's not really a home, but while you're there, you do a couple odd jobs around the city, earn your keep. Maybe you're looking for a place that feels right, but nothing's really matched up. And so it's been you 3 or 4 in the coterie that you've been unliving out of a van, and you do what you got to do. No Chronicle can last forever. It can be 3 sessions. Oh, book, come on, are you trying to tell me something? It can be 3 sessions, 20 or 100, but eventually all things must end. When you are planning your Chronicle, consider how long you wish for it to run and what the general structure should look like. This does not mean that you have to make an exact timetable for everything for the next 20 sessions. Rather, you can sketch out a broad outline, which will then adapt to what happens in the game. Let's say you're planning a 10-session Chronicle about young neonates in a Camarilla city. The first 3 or 4 games can be about exploring the setting and getting to know the different factions, as well as trying out the systems Vampire provides for play. When the Chronicle is running comfortably, you can up the stakes by introducing external threats, surprising power plays, important new supporting characters, and other developments around the 4th session. Maybe an elder departs for the Gehenna War and inexplicably decides to make the haven of one of the characters into an Elysium, promoting the character into the Keeper. Hi, Wally. Good to see you. Wally, it's good to see you. Just a mark of death scrolling up. But this is good advice. Have something in mind. I mean, the city might not burn down around the vampires. The vampires might burn up within the city, or somewhere in between of life in the city will continue on. With or without those vampires. But there will be a time when the story comes to an end. And bring it to that end. And it's okay if you want to have a time skip. Say, I don't know, 3 years later, let's pick up and same characters. I'll give you all 20 experience points, and let's get into something else that's been brewing, or that I gave hints about in this first part. You know, if I run something in Cleveland again, I would be happy to build off of some of the events that took place. There's a lot of explaining to do because there's a lot of Masquerade breaching going on. So, not that it can't be explained or covered up in some ways, but that's the question. How would this go about? Who would be involved? And what was going on around the fledglings, such that they were entrusted or sent along this particular mission? Sometimes surprising developments during the Chronicle invalidate your original ending. That's perfectly fine. Just reevaluate the Chronicle to see where it can develop a new one. A good storyteller needs to get used to implementing the old adage of kill your darlings, quote unquote. And this applies to endings as well. A very nice, it's sort of a TLDR. for your Chronicle. 5 quick things to consider and discuss with the players. Because, of course, IRL will also compete with your game night. Realism and game logic, especially when we have a real world, such as modern day whatever city, but also the supernatural and other such things. Even if it can feel strange to talk about realism in a game about blood-driven corpses and their undead intrigues, it's wise to be aware that it is possible to have radically different expectations in this area. A comparison with the world of movies can be a good way of opening a discussion in your group. Here, realism ranges from movies where somebody calls the cops if you start shooting in the streets, to action movies that defy the laws of gravity. Does a baton to the back of the head cause the guard to slump down unconscious, or does it cause head trauma and death? Is it possible to go through a window without horrible cuts? Are grenades explosions of death or cool background effects? Each troop will have their own truths, and given that role-playing has no script, a relatively consistent approach is preferable. The thing to avoid is to spring a different level of realism than expected on a player after the fact. For example, a player decides their character kicks open a door. They think the game follows action movie logic, so this should be possible. If you feel that the player is mistaken about the game's level of realism, you should say, your character knows that only works in action movies, instead of, your character hurts their foot and everybody laughs at them. Unless the player is making the character act stupidly on purpose, in which case, it's perfectly fine to make the environment react to that. It's only a breach if there are evidence or witnesses. Noctis, what if I told you there was plenty of both? One side effect of a situation where the players do not have full grasp on the game's levels of realism is unnecessary deliberating paranoia. The players are not sure how careful their characters should be to avoid repercussions, so they play it safe and go for an extreme level of caution. This tends to be destructive to games, as they slow down to paranoid crawls. For example, a character feeds from a mortal in an alley. If the players are unsure how the world works, they might get stuck discussing how to stop the mortal from remembering what happened. 1 or 2 discussions like this can be interesting for beginner vampires, but after a while, they can really slow down a game. As the storyteller, you can combat this by being consistent in how you apply consequences, and by being merciful when players take risks in the interest of exciting gameplay. Finally, while some groups might want to go towards hyper-realism, remember that your game will never function exactly as in real life. It is a game about vampires, and sometimes you will want to simplify or adjust things for the sake of a smoothly running game, no matter what your style is. Hooks. Hooks. Wally says, for me, any campaign I use an outline and timeline set up for 3 years at a time, so events are not overwhelming for the players. Noctis says it's only... Oh, yes, there's that. I would say hi to the Archons. Well, funny thing about that, Noctis. Wally says, I'm going to get Vampire the Masquerade now. It sounds amazing to play. And it is, Wally. And if you need help understanding rules or themes or coming up with an idea, you have an entire community here that will be happy to offer you suggestions, advice, or shared experiences that they've had as well. But there's plenty of very good, straightforward advice. Well, well, well. If it isn't Dreaded GM. What are you doing around these here parts, my friend? Raven, can I get a shout out to Dreaded GM, por favor? Absolutely not. That's the spirit. When are we playing? I just finished running a custom 3-parter, Dreaded, called The Red Deemer. And I set it in Cleveland, Ohio, of all places. Not that I would have any experience with Cleveland, Ohio. And so, this was the third of the other systems that I've been teaching and running this year. As we started with Cyberpunk Red, we then went into Alien RPG, and we're finishing up Vampire. I mean, we finished the 3-parter, and we're going through the workshop. And then in October, Dreaded GM, I am looking for people who would like to play Call of Cthulhu. Over here on the Discord, I have this channel called Lady in Red, and like I did for the other games, I'm looking for 4 people who would like to play in a Call of Cthulhu game. No experience or knowledge of the game is necessary, because the story will be custom built around your characters and is meant to introduce the concepts and the mechanics and the style of play of a Call of Cthulhu investigation. And I might, I remember you were running a camera test because you were going like black and white or like a sepia with it. And I hope that's been working out really well for you, Dreaded. There we go. There's the other command for it too. Everyone, please do give Dreaded GM a follow. You have in him a very dedicated and passionate storyteller, a voice actor, and honestly, just you can't sit at his table, virtual or otherwise, and not have a smile on your face. Very exuberant and a very cheerful fellow, even if he does speak with a strange accent. Dreaded, it would be a pleasure to have the forever DM GM ST curse broken at some point. It's yours. It's yours, Dreaded. So anyway, a lot of very good practical advice. If you aren't a forever ST, read through it. Or even if you're like, oh, I've run D&D forever and a day. Well, for those who have authored this system in this game, is there a lot that's spoken about here that maybe you have come to learn through your own years of experience in running, or through hard lessons learned as well? But I don't want to get into a lot of the details here in running the game, because this is the workshop on building it up. But there's all kinds of suggestions for you waiting here. You don't need to have played VTM for years to make your own story, just like you don't need to have played D&D for years to come up with your own fantasy story. Or, have done similar in other systems. You don't need to have played Cyberpunk 2020 for 20 years before you can come up with your own original Cyberpunk Red story. Hi, Evelyn. All right, be well, Wally. Thank you for hanging out as long as you did. So in this case here, we had a you know what? Let me show you the process that I went through for the custom story for Red Deemer. Let me get this. I'm going to blank this to a new canvas. And okay. That is up. Let me open this back up here. So in the course of the Red Deemer, and if you all wanted to follow this particular reference, there's plenty about the concept of rising action. I knew that I needed to sit back and I was going to tell a tale in 3 parts. And I needed a way to pace things out that would help accentuate a beginner-style adventure. Now, while 3 of the 4 players had experience in Vampire, and I kind of leaned into that, there's a way that you can bring about a story. And in this graphic, we show rising action, or we show exposition, conflict, rising action that reaches a climax, falling action, and a resolution. Rising action in a story most often follows the inciting event, the point of no return that leads us directly into the bulk or meat of the story. Rising action also sets up obstacles, conflicts, or questions that the main characters will have to overcome over the course of the story. It is. You got to learn your fundamentals before you do anything else. And what I was running, at least at its core in my heart, was a very basic story structure. Rising action also sets up obstacles, conflicts, or questions that the main characters will have to overcome over the course of the story. It's often considered the fuel for the story since it plays a large part in helping the audience understand these characters' motives, beliefs, desires, and goals. When used effectively, rising action can improve the impact of the climax of a story. It can build suspense and make the audience emotionally invested in what happens to the characters. So here we have rising action in a plot follows the exposition and is instigated by the inciting incident. Typically, stories abide by the following structure: exposition, inciting, rising, climax, resolution. And I open this up here to show that I can draw a line. Isn't that... Oh, praise me. Now, when we started out in the Red Deemer, we had things were very cool, right? Each of the characters got to introduce themselves. It was a night like any other. There was no particular pressure. There was no overarching mission. There was nothing that was necessarily threatening them. It was a pretty safe time, as I wasn't really going to allow for failure, because this was that moment of, here's Cleveland, here's how our vampires work individually and unlive in it, introduce them to some of the humor and everything that goes on. Then we get to the point that there is a little bit of conflict. It's kind of a safe conflict, though, right? At the end of each of the adventures, they received a summons to go see the sheriff. So it raised a little bit of tension. And then they were immersed into this other world. The sheriff gave them a rather safe assignment of being trained by a professional for the mission. Now, here we actually had more realized consequences for the successes and failures, unlike the it's any night, because now they're being tested. They could be hurt. They did need to, manage willpower and all this other stuff. Then we get to... I could probably go back and we'll do dark green to light green. Is that showing? That's showing up okay enough, I suppose. Now, with the pacing of Red Deemer, it didn't quite follow this, but we started out, exposition, no real consequences. You got to flex some powers, got to do some things. Things warm up as they're met by a person of mysterious power and authority. We ramp up into, all right, everyone's here, and now we're getting closer. This weird van showing an extent of resources. We are now we are entering the sheriff's salt labyrinth. Then you get the task and you train. Then we need to get out to the ship. Then there's the conflict aboard the ship. The conflict within the party afterwards for what happened. Then we get to the back to the sheriff. There's a big reveal and the fight that leads down to, well, things had resolved in interesting ways. I feel I feel that I lost some control over that game. Now, ultimately, if the players had fun, I ran it for the players, and I'm glad. Personally, as the one presenting, not that I'm like, oh, it had to go to my story. I felt like I got caught up in my own situation, and I did not make correct decisions in my calls, and that there were things that I could have, shoulda, woulda, been a little bit more clear on. But the outline for the story that I was trying to use as a guide rail, went from no consequences, rising tension, to something, to like this fierce interaction of extreme weight. Now we repeat that again with consequences, apply them to get to the ship. The big moment of, oh no, the ship. I probably shouldn't have made one curve over. It honestly probably should have looked a lot more like this. Hang on. That's probably, the purple line is a little bit better. Because I wanted each part to be its own little arc that built up and then released by the end. But you follow that pattern, and it can deviate on the fly, as the book said, or as we experienced in Red Deemer, or you have your own take on it. Yeah. So each making the 3 sessions overall, I mean, it kind of follows that, but it's a lot more squiggly within each, where there was that calmer moment, a moment of tension, and a moment of break. But it was ratcheting up to this grand point, and then there was the full release afterwards at the end. We come back down from it. The world resets. We take a tally of what was left over, who was left over, and we work out the consequences, and we say, you want to do it again next time? And everyone hopefully goes, yeah, that was fun. But using that kind of story structure, of rising action, if you want to lean into some other things, the hero's journey can work well. But there's other storytelling types. In Cyberpunk Red, that book talked about story like beats and cliffhangers as the way to control the ebb and flow of your story and to build up to things and resolve things. And you can do it that way too. Just because that's how Cyberpunk encourages storytelling doesn't mean you can't use it in Vampire or Pathfinder or whatever else. But overall, this was the concept versus application, but this was the concept that I had used. We had the city. My players, knew about it. I told them they could look into it, ask questions if they had any. They gave me their characters. I looked it over. I customized the events, because the events from the beginning were going to be fledglings are led to an authority, not the greatest authority of the city, but someone who's far more of an authority than they, are led to an authority, entrusted with a mission, a valuable decision, a loss and a moral decision would have to be made that would then lead to a conclusion. And where they had a softer decision aboard the ship, a harder decision would have to be made in the third part, carried forward. The decision to support Eli, Damocles question mark, or to go through things themselves. And so, even though it was only a 3-parter, things built into each other, where they would be carried forward, such that the players, either to help remember, or through their characters learning the ins and outs of an expedited timetable of, you spend 3 nights training with Damocles, kind of a thing, where they could carry those decisions, or the thoughtfulness, or at least have a moment in time they could go back and reference and say, well, I know we didn't really go into it, but if we spent 3 nights training with Damocles, would this have come up? Oh, that's a great question. Not that I wanted to hand wave it earlier, but you kind of have that referential moment. Sure. You know what? That makes sense. Given the attitude of everything that was going on in that warehouse during the training, I think this would have come up, and you could make a decision based on that. Cool. Well, well, well. We are being raided by Purely Cold-Blooded. Welcome, everyone, in from Purely Cold-Blooded's channel here. Let's get you a, let's get you a shout-out. Welcome. It is great to... Oh, we have snakes? Oh my gosh. Hold on a second. Hold on. You all can meet Biddy the Bit Snake. Hello. And how is your Tears of the Kingdom run? And Brufros, it is great to see you. Thank you for having this community you share. Well, thank you for trusting me not to embarrass you in front of your friends. And everyone out there, welcome to the Hero Zone. We are an extension of a brick-and-mortar friendly local game store. You know, the types of stores that sell Pokemon cards, Magic singles, comic books, Funko Pops, miniature paints, that kind of a thing. Role-playing books. And we take that same spirit of community, that same spirit of teaching others, welcoming them into our hobbies as well. And that's what this is. We do giveaways for stuff. We get minis and paints on people's tables and books and all kinds of stuff. And this week, we're talking about storytelling, and we're discussing storytelling through the lens of Vampire the Masquerade. In this case, particularly 5th edition, the most recent edition out. Oh, your tortoise out. So do you have like a tortoise cam on a terrarium or an aquarium, and your tortoise was joining you on the adventure? Oh, okay. But Brufo says she has lots of snakes and some cats and geckos in her turtle of epicness. Oh, cool. And I saw that you are, I was about to say a fellow Canadian. I'm close. I'm in northern Ohio. I could wave across the lake to you, or kind of. I don't know where you're at in Canada, but I'm across Lake Erie from Canada. And I'm very happy to meet another northern neighbor. That's awesome. 7 snakes, 4 geckos, 1 tortoise, 2 kitties, and a doggo. Oh, all right. So I can't just wave across the lake. I'm gonna have to turn. I'm gonna have to turn west a little bit. Gotcha. All right. Well, do I call you purely cold-blooded? PCB? I don't know. Are we on those terms already? Like I don't want to. I don't want to impose. Purely works. Then purely it shall. Well, that's cool that you have such an awesome menagerie that you share with your viewers. Let alone your passion for games, and the and the personality that you have been able to, use to entertain others and spend a good time. Though, may I put you on the spot? Do you do any tabletop role-playing games, purely? D&D, Pathfinder? Do you play Vampire the Masquerade at all? You're on the spot. I didn't raid into some rando that Brufro suggested. I'm trying to sign off and eat dinner. What's this guy doing? Brufros, I promise, I'm not trying to embarrass you in front of your friends. I'll be like that parent, right? You come over and you're like, oh, Matt, I brought my friends over. I walk out and I'm like, Brufros, you clogged the toilet again. I had to plunge for 15 minutes after you got out of there. I only just now went, oh, hi. Well, you must be, I have the plunger. I'm like, oh, you must be Brufros. Oh, sorry, put that down. Well, Purely, it's nice to meet you. No, I've been trying to corrupt, expose her to the joys of true nerddom. You got animal crackers, I'm good for a few minutes? Well, I'll tell you what, Purely cold-blooded, if there is a way that I can help welcome you to the world of role-playing, storytelling at a table with friends or family, it could be a virtual table as well, to make a character that challenges you or releases you to do something cool that you've always thought about doing, let me know how best I may interface with you in order to welcome you into the world of tabletop role-playing games. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be D&D, Pathfinder. Those are two big names. Could be Vampire the Masquerade. Could be My Little Pony or Transformers RPG. Could be Dresden Files, Dune, The Expanse. It could be that you like Victorian era, Nordic horror. In which case I'd suggest Vesson. Or if you want the bread and butter, D&D is a way to go too. You have many options. Sci-fi, fantasy, horror, more comedic takes, more like beer and pretzels casual stuff. There's a one-page role-playing game called Lasers and Feelings. Or even Honey Heist that you might enjoy. Or, if you have a mind for tactics and battle planning, I can suggest some games to you as well. Yep, Rosewolf is a recent newcomer as well to role-playing games. Always found it's hard to make time for it. Fantasy? Well, you know what I would suggest then, Purely? If you ask someone or find someone you trust, ask for something called a one-shot, or at least some kind of a short-form adventure, such that, kind of like what I was discussing here, maybe it's just 3 sessions of something. And even if maybe you don't complete it, but all right, on these nights, I will make myself free, and we'll play through what's there. And if we finish it, we finish it. If not, maybe we could squeak in a 4th some other time. But you find someone who you think can tell you a good story, help you learn the system, provide a tutorial style story, might even give you a character based on just some questions, and then instruct you through. Purely cold-blooded. Yep. Not every role-playing game has to take 5, 6, 2 years. On this channel, I had a 4-year-long D&D session. It doesn't have to be long-term. There's a lot of short-form stuff that you can run through as well, or tell yourself. Because if you're the one running, that might even be the easiest way for you to make time, because you know your time. And you are in control of the table and the environment. And if you need to step away to tend to a critter, or if you say, well, this was fun, but I told myself I got to stop streaming at this time. All right, crew, good session. Let's pack up and we'll pick up next week. A one-shot is what my group did for our first game and kept going from there. And by the way, purely cold-blooded, we are now one person closer to summoning Tiamat, a 5-headed dragon goddess. Kind of evil sometimes, most of the time, all the time. But when I hit 4,000 Twitch followers, I will be conducting an event through this channel and our Discord where I will give away a $400 gargantuan Tiamat miniature. It's about the size of a house cat with big wings. That you can drop on your table and say, all right, your one shot tonight is survive this. So thank you, not only for trusting Brufros, that you've been led to a fun and welcoming community, but one that maybe at some point in time, if I can help get you on the path to role-playing and storytelling, to thinking creatively, to helping you bring to life that story you know that you have. I'm sure you may be cold-blooded, but in your heart that still beats. There's a story you want to tell. A wouldn't it be cool if? A it's everything that I know but this one thing scenario. And if myself or others here in this community can help kindle that fire, or urge the sun to come out from behind the clouds so you may bask upon a rock and soak up that sun and feel absolutely like 102-ish degrees. Is that like the average for like a basking rock? No, that's in freedom units. So you'll have to pardon me. I'm a you know, I work with what I got. But Urfrost, you think she'd be a dragonborn druid with lots of animal handling? Hey, if you want to play a character with what you know, that's awesome. Or, you know, purely cold-blooded. If you say, I actually would like to play a character that is completely not me. I'm going to challenge myself to be, I don't know, whatever the opposite of you is. Then there you go. That's the beauty and freedom of storytelling. That's true. I do also have monthly giveaways for miniatures. And there's actually a coloring book event going on right now where people can win some extra prizes for coloring in mascot pages. It's that easy. Over on our Discord here in the Spirited Colorings. There's our Goblin and our Glublin, our Drider, and our Store Ghost. Her name is Awe. The store's across the street from a cemetery, and mysterious sounds actually emanate from the store. So we've concluded that the store is in fact haunted, and the ghost's name is Awe. A-A-H, all capital letters. This is from a community member who was a former local, moved a little bit away. But Dan the Art Man has done a lot of the art for the coloring book pages. In fact, you can see all of the old coloring book pages in our Liber Colorum for past seasons and events. So, for example, there's Biddy the Bit Snake trying to find the pickle in the Christmas tree, while our Goblin is also looking around for it. And this was a nod to a fellow streamer, Kobold Sprig. But there's past seasons, Halloween, where all the characters dress up. We do a lot of fun stuff here. We keep it fun, conversational, no worse than PG-13, except on rare occasion where I'll say, like for Vampire the Masquerade, when we were playing the game on Tuesdays, we just finished it last night. That is more like an R-rated movie. But normally in our workshops and on our Discord, we keep it PG-13, very welcoming. And if something comes up in the course of storytelling, like especially with Vampire, deals a lot of like street level stuff, the conflict of humanity with itself, let alone that there's monsters among them, amogus, in the terms of vampires. Obviously, some tough stuff can come up, but through the lens of storytelling and trying to understand these points, we improve ourselves through the conversation. And we can actually talk about mature things as mature people without it breaking down into, factionalized blah, blah, blah. Because we're being thoughtful and conversational about it. So, a lot of other seasonal art. I put out Valentine's cards and such. And there's also just straight up mascot art showing that we've been around for a while, and I love commissioning art from the community out there. And there's a lot that's been drawn and offered. And I'm very proud to be able to share all of this stuff with you. Oh, excellent. Well, Purely, if you need any art advice, you may very well have artists in your community. Don't be afraid to join ours, as in our mentor section, we do have an art and writing channel. So if you're looking for, you know what, I'm using Procreate or Krita or whatever else, Photoshop, and I'm trying to get the hang of this, or I'm looking at getting a new stylus and pad. Do any of you have a recommendation? Or even if you go traditional, you're like, you know what? I want to learn how to draw with charcoal. There are mentors in this community who are voluntarily trying to answer questions, and or if they can't, or to support their answers, they can also reference you to other sources. Well, Purely, however this community can accentuate what you wish to do or what you wish to learn, know that you have made a friend, and not just with me. There are many people out here. We love welcoming new people into our community. We'll try not to make it too awkward for you. And you are absolutely welcome to ask all of the beginner, stupid questions that you want. Because we were all new at some point in time to any of these games, to any of the other things that we do, photography, drawing, painting, writing, anything else like that, miniature painting. You'd probably enjoy miniature painting as well. So, I mean, you're probably a busy woman tending to all the critters you do. And of course, you have your streams. But if there's a way that you want to interface, or you say, you know what, it's not now, it's 2 months from now, because you got a lot going on right now, and then you're getting settled in for winter. You say, you know what, I remember raiding into that channel 2 months ago. Let's see if that guy is actually good for what he said. And you say, hey, I'm Purely. You might remember me. Came in on that raid during the vampire stream. And I'm looking to start learning how to play whatever game. Or Matt told me that I can ask the mentors here about suggestions for drawing pads. ... That's fine. Your voluntary interface is welcome anytime you got it. Ooh, I would be interested to get your insight on miniature painting after you've done macro painting as a career then. And a lot of what I said, it's applicable to It's applicable from Vampire, like the relationship map we talked about, to other games, and a lot of the concepts I just talked about here with Purely, you can bring into Vampire. Oh, and face painting as well. Oh, macro. So you know you have like micro or mini is small. Macro is large. I'll tell you what. I will immerse you. I will immerse you into a story. Maybe into a few. Purely, do you have a little bit of time, or do you need to go? I got a fun little intro video that might fascinate you. Or several, depending on your time. All right. Purely, would you like an introduction to Cyberpunk Red, an introduction to Alien RPG, or an introduction to Vampire the Masquerade? Which of those three sounds pretty good to you? I know it's not fantasy per se, not like Sword and Sorcery. I mean, I kind of have one of those. I don't know if I have it loaded up, though. I pick. Okay. Well, if you do like fantasy, rather, I should ask this: do you have an aversion to something like horror? If you're like, oh, Alien, not a fan. Obviously, I won't pick Alien. You do. Oh, all right. Well, if that will make your Kokoro go Doki Doki, if you've played an Alien game before, well, let me see what I can do for you. Well, if you don't want to be tortured and you'd like something a little bit lighter, then I will go with Cyberpunk then. Cyberpunk, I don't think would be maybe as startling if that's not what you're in the mood for purely. I'm still here. Don't worry. Unless. Oh, it's not on that one. That's why. Is it on this one? It is! All right. We'll try this. And there you go. So, purely, that was a quick little video intro into some scenes and some themes that you can explore in a game of Cyberpunk. Now, you do have to go. You gotta feed the kitty cats. So, I appreciate you joining us. And I hope we'll get to see you around here again.